Hi guys, Josh here, aka Beards and Books. Today I'm doing my July wrap-up. Hope you enjoy. So, if you've seen my recent videos, you'll have heard me talking about the fact that 2018 so far has been a really positive reading year for me. Hasn't stopped with July. July was another really strong year. I finished 6 books in July and actually really enjoyed the vast majority of them. There was luckily none that I would describe as bad books, but I will go into a bit more detail for you now. 2 of the books I finished in July I've actually done reviews for, so I will quickly touch on them, but it will be short and sweet. I will leave links for the review videos above if you wanted to check out them more. So first up, and one of the books that I really enjoyed was To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee. I gave this 9 out of 10. As I said, I will leave a link for the review video up above if you want to find out more detail. But I loved this book. I've always had a really strange relationship with classics. Usually the writing style and the lack of anything that really happens throws me off, but this was just fantastic. If you've been thinking about reading it, definitely check out my review. It's really positive. I really enjoyed it and I'm sure you would too. Second up is Trigger Mortis by Anthony Horowitz, which is one of the recent James Bond novels. So as I said, this is another one that I did a review video for. I will leave a link for it above. This one was kind of so-so. I didn't hate it, I didn't love it. I read Trigger Mortis and I've also read Forever and a Day by Anthony Horowitz. Forever and a Day definitely got a more positive review for me. I've done a review for both Trigger Mortis and Forever and a Day. I will try and leave them both linked at least at some point while I'm talking about these videos. So if you're interested in reading James Bond novels, at least the newer ones by Anthony Horowitz, definitely check them out. Trigger Mortis got a 6 out of 10. It was good to an extent, but there was negatives as well. I won't put it any other way for you. Check out the review if you want to know more. It's decent, it's worth a read if you're a James Bond fan, but if you're new to the series like me, I'd recommend Forever and a Day over Trigger Mortis. So getting on to the books I haven't done reviews for, so the ones I haven't touched on. First up is Ravensgate, which is part of the Power of Five series by Anthony Horowitz. So as I touched on a minute ago when talking about Trigger Mortis, Anthony Horowitz is a writer that I've wanted to read and explore more. From reading Forever and a Day, Trigger Mortis, I really enjoyed his writing style. I found it easy to read, quick to read, but still detailed to the level that I personally enjoy. Ravensgate followed on in that series actually. So this is a YA series. It's probably a young YA series in all honesty. It's probably more of a children's series, which is probably why it was so easy to read. It essentially follows one boy who's had quite a troubled upbringing. His parents die young and he sort of moves from foster home to foster home, and then he eventually settles with his aunt, has a strained relationship with his aunt, gets in trouble with the police and enrolls in a sort of government program to help troubled teenagers essentially. So without giving away too many spoilers, following on from that, we get into cult pacts with the devil, trying to bring the devil back to life. We've got superpowers, we've got teenage groups that, although it's not explored on in this book, that are destined to save the world essentially. So the Power of Five is about 5 teenagers that have their own powers and are supposed to sort of bring the world together and save the world. Now it's a series that I'm definitely going to carry on more with. I'm not sure when. I've got so many books in my TBR building up at the minute. It's probably not one I'll get to soon, but I actually really enjoyed the book so far. If any of you have read the Power of Five series in more detail, let me know what you thought. Does the series build up from here, or is the Power of Five Ravensgate probably where it peters out? Let me know. Next up is A Game of Thrones Dance of Dragons Part 1. So I recently did a series review for Game of Thrones. So again, I won't go into this in too much detail. If you've watched any of my videos, you'll probably know that I'm a massive Game of Thrones fan. It's one of the series that I talk about the most. I recommend it to absolutely everyone. Dance of Dragons Part 1 was no different in that respect. I won't go into it too much detail again. As I said, I've already done a review for the series overall, so I will link that above if you want to check it out. But Game of Thrones always gets a 10 out of 10 for me. There's just something about the series, the writing style that George R. R. Martin uses, the characters that he's created, the world it's set in, that just really hits home with me. I love the series. Now, one thing I'll say, I've only got one more book to read. Obviously, A Dance of Dragons Part 2 is the latest Game of Thrones book that's out at the moment, so I am starting to look for new series that I can read. Fantasy or otherwise, it doesn't have to be fantasy, but if you've got any recommendations for a Game of Thrones fan, if you're like me and you're a Game of Thrones fan and there's other series you think I'd enjoy, let me know down in the comments because I'm definitely on the lookout for more. Okay, so if you follow me on Instagram, you'll have seen that in July, I let my girlfriend pick a book for me to read from her collection, essentially. I recommend my girlfriend a lot of books, the same as I'm sure other reading couples do. She's read a lot of mine, but I typically have avoided most of her books so far in the typical man response of, I don't want to read romance. So I let my girlfriend pick a book for me, and she picked Me Before You by Jojo Moyes. I'm not going to lie, I really enjoyed it. It's a really good book. So the reason she picked this one, although it's romance based and there is a romantic storyline, it's a lot more about not letting one choice or one part of your life define you and define the rest of your life. So it's quite a well-known story. There are two main characters, Lou and Will. Will is a quadriplegic, I think is the term. So he can move his head, he can move bits of his fingers and his arms, but pretty much everything from the waist down he can't move. He was quite a successful man before he had his accident where he was hit by a motorbike. And the story focuses a lot around his life after the accident and Lou, who becomes his carer, best friend, and so on, trying to sort of change his outlook on life and trying to change his views on the world. He thinks essentially that his life is over from his accident and that he'll never sort of get to live in the same way. I won't go into too much detail in the story because there's not a lot you can say without giving away real spoilers on this one, but guys out there, if you're like me and you've always said, no, romance isn't for me in any way, give this one a go. This genuinely is a very well written book. Jojo Moyes did a really good job. The two main characters of Lou and Will are both brilliant. I've actually watched the film for this as well, and I really enjoyed the film. The film cuts out a lot of, I don't want to say a lot, but it cuts out good chunks from the book. It's always the way with film adaptations, but you get a lot more of Lou's history and storyline in this, which I actually really enjoyed reading because the character makes a lot more sense when you understand her history and her background. So I gave this 7 out of 10. I probably would give it a higher score, but romance doesn't grip me. It doesn't bring me in like a lot of other genres do, so I can't really give it any more if I'm being honest with myself. I don't think I'll carry on reading romance novels, but I will definitely be a lot more receptive in the future if my girlfriend wants to recommend books, because now she knows my reading style a bit better and she knows what type of romance books I probably would read. And just to shout it out as well, I tweeted Jojo Moyes saying I really enjoyed it. She tweeted me back saying thank you, which is always very much appreciated when authors do it. So definitely one worth considering. Right. On to the last book for July, and I have saved the best for last. So I am a big fantasy fan. I'm also a big sci-fi fan. I probably read more fantasy than anything, but I've been trying to branch out and read more sci-fi recently. So I picked up The Martian by Andy Weir, which is probably one of the best books I've ever read. So for those of you that don't know, the story of The Martian is about an astronaut called Mark Watney who's on a mission in space with a crew. It's, standard space story. And he actually gets stranded in space. This isn't a spoiler. This is all, really early stuff. You can read it on the blurb if you want. So due to an accident on Mars, his crew think Mark has died and they leave him behind because it does look like he's died. Mark wakes up and he is then he has to survive on Mars essentially. Obviously there's a setup for his crew that were there, but it's a setup that is destined to last weeks and months rather than years, and obviously travel from Earth to Mars for anyone to try and get and rescue Mark would take years. So we follow Mark Watney's story as he's trying to survive on Mars. He's trying to find ways to communicate with Earth and with his past crew. There's not a lot I can say. This is just, it's fantastic. It's so well written. It was my first book by Andy Weir, but I will pick up absolutely anything that he does in the future just to see if he can carry it on. The character of Mark Watney is one of the best characters I've ever read in any book. You'd think, given that the story focuses on Mark Watney, it's his story and it's pretty much only his story for at least large chunks of the book, that it could get boring only seeing it from one perspective. But the character he's hilarious. He's so funny, it's so witty, but it's done in a very good way. It's all done at times where when you get to know the character, you expect him to crack a joke or you expect him to make you laugh. It's just brilliant. The ending's brilliant. Every part of the book's brilliant. There wasn't one page where I thought it slowed down. It's a quick book. It's only just over 300 pages. So if you like me and you like the occasional quick read in your month, 100% pick up The Martian. It's my book of July by A Country Mile. Is an absolute 10 out of 10 book. It would be one of my top 5 books in general from now on. It's one I'll reread in time. I watched the film multiple times. The film is great, but it doesn't do justice anywhere near the same as the book does. So if you're a sci-fi fan, even if you're not, if you just want to try the sci-fi genre, definitely try The Martian. So guys, that is my July wrap up all done. They were 6 really good books, all ones I really enjoyed. If you want to pick any of them up, or know any more about them, let me know down in the comments. I'm happy to answer any questions. So if you've been watching my videos, you will know that I am a couple of weeks in to, well, a week or so in to my Stephen King reading challenge. I'm currently cracking through It and The Bizarre Bad Dreams. But if you want to know more about my reading challenge with Stephen King, make sure to follow me on Instagram and Twitter. I put regular updates on there rather than doing videos, just because you don't want to see videos every 2-3 days of a man talking about how scary a clown can be. So I really hope you've enjoyed the video, guys. Make sure to like, comment and subscribe if you have, and I will see you soon. Bye bye.